Breaking news out of the capital city. 13 people are charged. 11 are in custody after a 6-month investigation into drug trafficking.
Officials say 2 more people are expected to be arrested shortly. These arrests were the results of multiple early morning raids.
Office of the Speaker of the House, FBI and ICE teams uncover a staggering haul. 3 tons of narcotics hidden inside the Capitol, totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. Now the U.S. military moves in to secure the grounds as the investigation widens. News 24.
Under the Trump administration, we're finally treating the cartels as the core national security threat that they really are. The cartels are waging war on America, and just as I promised in the campaign, we're waging war on them like they've never seen before. All you have to do is turn on your television and you'll see what's happening to them.
March 12th, 2025, 6:47 a.m. United States Capitol Building, Washington, D.C. FBI Special Agent Laura Chen walked through the marble corridors of the Rayburn House Office Building with a federal search warrant in hand. Her destination? Room 2134, the Congressional Office of Representative Michael Davidson, a 6-term congressman representing Texas's 23rd district along the U.S.-Mexico border. What FBI would discover in the next 6 hours would shake American politics to its core. Hidden in Davidson's office safe, $2.3 million in cash, neatly bundled and labeled by date. In his personal files, detailed ledgers documenting 6 years of payments from the Sinaloa Cartel totaling over $50 million. On his encrypted phones, thousands of messages coordinating with cartel leadership about legislation, enforcement policies, and border patrol operations. Representative Davidson wasn't just a congressman. He was a paid agent of the Sinaloa Cartel, using his position in the United States House of Representatives to protect cartel operations, block enforcement legislation, and provide intelligence on federal anti-drug efforts. For $50 million, he'd sold his oath, his office, and his country to the very criminals American forces were fighting to stop. And he wasn't working alone. 8 members of his congressional staff, including his chief of staff, legislative director, and communications director, were on the cartel's payroll, earning between $500,000 and $2 million each over 6 years. Together, they ran a criminal enterprise from the halls of Congress, shielded by political power while serving cartel interests. Want to see how the FBI brought down a sitting member of Congress who sold out America to drug cartels? Smash that like button and subscribe to Truth America right now, because this story will show you corruption at the absolute highest levels of Representative Michael Davidson was elected to Congress in 2012, representing Texas's 23rd Congressional District, a sprawling border region covering over 800 miles along the Rio Grande. But within months of taking office, Davidson was approached by Sinaloa Cartel intermediaries. The approach was sophisticated, made through legitimate businessmen who claimed to represent trade organizations concerned about border policy. Only later did Davidson learn his benefactors were cartel operatives. By then, he'd already taken the first payment. And once you take cartel money, you can't give it back. Davidson's value to the cartel was immense. As a member of the House Homeland Security Committee, he had access to classified briefings on border enforcement operations, cartel investigations, and DEA activities. He could influence legislation affecting border security, drug policy, and immigration enforcement. And he could coordinate with other border state representatives to block measures that threatened cartel operations. Over 6 years, Davidson provided the cartel with services worth far more than the $50 million they paid him. Legislative sabotage. Davidson used his position to block or weaken bills that would have enhanced border security, increased DEA funding, or strengthened penalties for drug trafficking. When enforcement legislation came to committee, he'd propose amendments that gutted key provisions. The operation was so successful that the Sinaloa Cartel considered Davidson one of their most valuable assets, more useful than corrupt border officials, because his position gave him access to policymaking and intelligence that affected cartel operations nationwide. The investigation that would end Davidson's career began in August 2024, when FBI arrested a high-ranking Sinaloa financial coordinator in San Diego. In his encrypted phone, agents found references to the Congressman and discussions about payments, legislative actions, and intelligence deliveries. FBI's Public Corruption Unit opened a classified investigation. Because the target was a sitting member of Congress, the inquiry required approval from the highest levels of the Department of Justice. Attorney General Pamela Bondi personally authorized the investigation after reviewing preliminary evidence suggesting a congressman was on cartel payroll. FBI couldn't approach Davidson directly or tip off anyone in his office. If he learned of the investigation, evidence would be destroyed and the case compromised. FBI began with financial analysis. Davidson's official financial disclosures showed a modest congressional salary and minimal outside income. Deeper investigation revealed the scheme. Payments from the cartel didn't go directly to Davidson. That would be too obvious. Instead, money flowed through a network of shell companies and consulting firms allegedly providing political advisory services to Davidson. These companies would invoice Davidson for services never rendered, and he'd report this as legitimate consulting income. In reality, the companies were cartel fronts, and the consulting fees were bribes. FBI had built an airtight case. March 12th, 2025. 6 a.m. FBI tactical teams positioned outside the Rayburn House Office Building. The operation required coordination with Capitol Police, who were briefed just hours earlier under strict secrecy. Drop a comment below. Should there be term limits to prevent career politicians from becoming corrupt? What's the solution to stopping this kind of betrayal? And if you're not subscribed to Truth America yet, hit that button. We expose the swamp that sells out America. Subscribe now. The search of Davidson's office revealed evidence beyond what FBI had expected. In his personal safe, hidden behind a bookshelf, $2.3 million in cash, bundled in $100,000 stacks. Each stack was labeled with dates corresponding to legislative actions Davidson had taken. The ledgers were meticulous. Perhaps Davidson thought they'd protect him somehow, or perhaps he simply couldn't resist documenting his crimes. Davidson's computers held encrypted files with thousands of communications between him and cartel intermediaries, messages coordinating payments, summaries of classified briefings sent to cartel contacts, draft legislation designed to weaken enforcement measures. The digital evidence alone filled 40 hard drives. Simultaneously, FBI arrested the 8 congressional staff members at their homes across the D.C. area. Each had accepted hundreds of thousands to millions in cartel money. Each had played specific roles in the conspiracy, and each faced decades in federal prison. Searches of staff members' residences revealed similar evidence: cash, encrypted communications, and records documenting their roles in the conspiracy. Davidson's chief of staff had $780,000 cash in his home and ledgers showing $2.4 million in total payments over 6 years. By noon, all 9 defendants were in federal custody. The news broke across Washington like a thunderclap. Sitting congressmen arrested for taking $50 million in cartel bribes. The political fallout was immediate. March 13th, 2025. Attorney General Pamela Bondi held a press conference at the Department of Justice alongside FBI Director Christopher Wray and DEA Administrator Ann Milgram. Yesterday, the FBI arrested Representative Michael Davidson and 8 members of his congressional staff for operating a criminal enterprise on behalf of the Sinaloa Cartel. For 6 years, Representative Davidson took $50 million in bribes to sabotage enforcement legislation, leak classified intelligence, and protect cartel operations. He betrayed his oath of office, betrayed his constituents, and betrayed the United States of America. This is corruption at the highest level of government, and it will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The charges were comprehensive: bribery of a public official, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, leaking classified information, obstruction of justice, money laundering, and racketeering. Davidson faced over 200 years in federal prison if convicted on all counts. The House of Representatives immediately stripped Davidson of his committee assignments pending the outcome of his trial. Congressional leadership from both parties condemned him. Within days, the House Ethics Committee recommended expulsion, a vote that would require 2/3 majority but was expected to pass given the overwhelming evidence. Davidson's attorney attempted to argue that the payments were legitimate consulting fees, not bribes, but the prosecution presented the ledgers showing payments explicitly tied to specific congressional actions. They presented wiretaps where Davidson discussed legislative sabotage with cartel operatives. They presented evidence that his intelligence leaks had compromised federal operations and allowed hundreds of millions in drugs to escape seizure. 3 of the 8 staff members accepted plea agreements in exchange for testimony against Davidson, receiving sentences ranging from 12 to 18 years. Their testimony was devastating, describing in detail how Davidson had run his congressional office as a cartel asset, coordinating legislative sabotage and intelligence leaks while enriching himself and his staff. Davidson and the 5 remaining staff members went to trial in July 2025. The trial lasted 9 weeks. Every day brought new revelations about how deeply the cartel had infiltrated congressional operations. Prosecutors presented 847 pieces of evidence, including financial records, wiretaps, encrypted messages, the ledgers found in Davidson's safe, and testimony from cooperating witnesses. The jury deliberated for 2 days before returning guilty verdicts on all counts for all 6 defendants. The courtroom was packed with journalists, constituents who'd been betrayed, and federal agents who'd built the case. At sentencing in September 2025, Davidson received 35 years in federal prison. The judge's words were harsh. "You were elected to represent the people of Texas's 23rd district. Instead, you represented the Sinaloa Cartel. You used your congressional office to protect drug traffickers. You leaked classified information that compromised law enforcement operations. You sabotaged legislation meant to protect Americans from drug violence. You are not a public servant. You are a criminal who wore the disguise of a congressman. You will spend the rest of your productive life in federal prison." The 5 staff members received sentences ranging from 20 to 28 years. All assets purchased with cartel money, homes, vehicles, investments, were seized and forfeited. The House voted 418-0 to expel Davidson from Congress, only the 6th representative expelled in American history. His congressional pension was forfeited. His name was removed from legislation he'd sponsored. And his district held a special election to replace him with a representative who would actually serve constituents rather than cartels. The scandal triggered comprehensive reforms in congressional financial disclosure and oversight. New requirements mandate enhanced financial scrutiny for representatives from border districts, random audits of outside income sources, and FBI vetting of congressional staff with access to classified information. The reforms won't prevent all corruption, but they'll make it harder for future representatives to follow Davidson's path. President Trump addressed the conviction during a speech on draining the swamp. A congressman from Texas was convicted of taking $50 million from drug cartels. He sold out his constituents, sold out his country, and will spend 35 years in prison. This is what we're fighting: career politicians who get rich by betraying America. We will not stop until every corrupt politician is exposed, prosecuted, and removed from power. By November 2025, the investigation expanded. FBI identified 2 other members of Congress with suspicious financial activity and cartel ties, triggering ongoing investigations. The message was clear: congressional immunity doesn't protect criminal activity, and the Justice Department will prosecute corruption at any level. Davidson will be 89 years old when released from prison. The man who once walked the halls of Congress now walks prison yards in an orange jumpsuit. The office where he once wielded power is now occupied by someone who actually serves the public. And the $50 million he earned betraying America was forfeited. Every dollar seized, leaving him with nothing but decades behind bars to contemplate his betrayal. If you believe Truth America is essential to exposing the corruption career politicians hide, then like this video, subscribe to our channel, and smash that notification bell. Share this with everyone who's tired of politicians selling out America for personal profit. This is why we exist, to bring you the truth about what really happens in Washington, who's really serving special interests instead of you, and how justice, when finally delivered, holds the corrupt accountable. This is Truth America. We'll never stop exposing the swamp. We'll see you in the next one.